The woman who came with dust on her dress. The wind carried the smell of rain that would never come. Dust moved in small, ghostly spirals along the road, as if the earth itself was sighing. A wagon will creak somewhere beyond the ridge, then went still. The town of Dustwater Crossing lay quiet. Too quiet. Its doors closed, its windows shuttered against more than the wind. From that silence came a shape, a woman walking. Her dress was the color of the road, her bonnet tipped low, and the dust clung to her hem as though it had been waiting for her. She stopped outside the Boone Ranch gate. The sign hung crooked, one nail rusted loose, swinging with a lonely creak. A man stood beyond the fence, sleeves rolled to the elbow, arms hard as the land. His eyes, the gray of thunder that never struck, followed her slow approach. "You lost." His voice cut through the stillness. No, her words were quiet but steady, the kind that didn't ask permission to be heard. "I came for work." The man studied her. Behind him, the ranch spread like an old scar, fences sagging, the barn leaning to one side, cattle thin from a summer that forgot mercy. He spat into the dust. "Ain't much work worth the payout here." She stepped closer, pulling the bonnet's string loose. A strand of dark hair fell across her cheek, streaked with the white of early grief. Her eyes were calm, too calm. "I don't ask much," she said. "Just a place to sleep. Food enough to stand." Boone looked her over again, not in the way of a man judging a woman, but like one trying to see what the wind had brought him. "You right. Walk." "That's so." She nodded once. He looked toward the road, empty all the way to the horizon. "Town's half dead," he muttered. "Sheriff's worse. Best folks keep to themselves." "That suits me." Boone leaned on the fence post. "Name?" "Clara Vale." The name didn't stir anything in him. He just nodded slow. Then she said, almost like confession, "I'm not beautiful." A small silence passed, only the wind moving through dry grass. Boone's jaw flexed once before he spoke. "That's fine," he said. "I need honest, not fancy." The barn door groaned open, spilling out the smell of hay and old smoke. Boone handed her a bucket. "Water's by the trough. Feed the mare first. She's mean if you don't." Clara took the bucket and walked past him. The mare stamped and snorted, eyes rolling white for a heartbeat, then stilled. Clara's hand, pale and steady, brushed the horse's neck. No fear, just familiarity. Boone watched from the doorway, arms crossed. Something about her quiet unnerved him, not because it was fragile, but because it wasn't. "Been around horses much?" he asked. She didn't look back. Enough to know when they lie. A faint smile touched his mouth, first in weeks. That night, the lantern light flickered against rough wood. The air inside the ranch house smelled of smoke, coffee, and loneliness. Boone sat across the table, silent, eating beans from a tin plate. Clara ate slow, eyes lowered. The only sound was the ticking of a wall clock that hadn't been right since spring. "You from back east?" Boone asked finally. "I was," she said. "Was." "Not anymore." He waited for more. None came. Outside, coyotes called, long, low, mournful notes that echoed off the hills. Boone's gaze went to the rifle propped near the door. Clara's followed it too. "You keep that close," she said quietly. "Old habit." "Old habits are hard to bury," she murmured. Boone's eyes met hers, but she didn't flinch. Morning came like a bruise spreading across the sky, red first, then fading to gray. Boone found her already outside, mending the corral fence. The hammer struck wood in a rhythm too practiced for a new hand. "You start early," he said. "Started before dawn. Couldn't sleep." Boone leaned on a post, watching her. "Town folks will talk. They always do." He grunted. "You been in town already?" "Passed through. Bought flour. Saw the sheriff." Boone's face hardened. "Maddox." She nodded. He's had a cruel smile, the kind that don't reach the eyes. "That's the one," Boone said. "Crow owns him. Owns most of Dustwater." Her hammer paused midair. "Crow." Boone gave a short nod. "Silas Crow. Thinks he can buy the county. He's trying to buy this ranch, too." Her eyes lingered on the horizon, where the dust from town still floated like a warning. "Then he's the kind that mistakes ownership for power." Boone raised an eyebrow. "You talk like someone who's seen both." She met his gaze, unblinking. Maybe I have. That evening, Boone rode into town for supplies. Clara stayed behind, tending the fire. As the light faded, she walked to the well to draw water. The sky above her deepened to a hard violet, and the wind carried the far-off sound of laughter. Men's voices, mean and sharp. Two riders came out of the darkness, their horses kicking up red dust. One called out, "Evening, miss. Didn't know Boone was hiring help that looked like you." Clara set the bucket down slow. The man dismounted, boots thudding against the dirt. "You got a name?" he asked, stepping closer. She looked up at him. "I told it once today. That's enough." He grinned, yellow teeth showing. "Ain't polite to be rude to friendly folks." "Then don't mistake yourselves for friendly." Something cold flickered in her voice, quiet, but sharp enough to slice through the dark. The man's grin faltered. Boone's voice came from behind them. "You boys lost." The men turned, startled. Boone sat in his saddle, rifle resting across his thighs, eyes steady. "We were just talking," one muttered. "Then talk on your own land," Boone said. "This one's mine." The riders spat, muttered curses, and turned their horses. Their laughter carried faintly as they rode back toward Dustwater. Boone dismounted, walking toward Clara. "They work for Crow," he said. "You best not be outside alone at night." "I'm not afraid," she said. He looked at her hands, calm, folded at her waist. But in the faint glow of the firelight, he saw it. The pale, rough skin between her thumb and forefinger. The telltale mark of someone who'd gripped a revolver more than once. Boone didn't speak of it. Neither did she. The wind rose again, whispering through the dry grass, carrying the smell of dust and memory. Somewhere inside that wind, if you listened close enough, there was something else. Not quite thunder, but close. And if an old man told the story years later by the fire, he'd say that was the night Dustwater Crossing first felt the change coming. The night a plain woman with honest eyes walked through its gates and the world started holding its breath. The quiet before the dust storm. The fence post cracked under her hammer, splinters flying like dry rain. Clara didn't curse. She simply set another plank in place and drove the nail through, the sound sharp and lonely in the morning air. Somewhere down the slope, Boone's cattle stirred, their calls echoing off the far canyon walls. Boone rode in slow from the ridge, hat tilted low. "They've been watching," he said, his tone low enough to blend with the wind. "Crow's men?" she asked, still working. "Two of 'em near the creek this morning. Didn't bother to hide." She struck another nail home. "Then they're waiting for you to be afraid." Boone dismounted, his boots sinking into the dust. "You talk like you've seen their kind before." "I've seen worse," she said quietly. He studied her, that same unease from before creeping back. She moved with the grace of someone used to danger, not fearing it, just familiar with it. Later that day, Boone loaded the wagon for town. He paused when Clara handed him the list: flour, kerosene, rope. Her handwriting was sharp, deliberate. "You need anything else?" he asked. She hesitated. "Soap." Then, after a pause, "and a new nail hammer. The one here's too light." Boone gave a small nod. "You'll be all right here alone?" "I was all right before you rode in," she replied. He smiled faintly. "That's what I figured." When he was gone, the silence thickened, the kind that settled before storms or funerals. Clara sat on the porch, sharpening a kitchen knife on a whetstone. With each stroke, her reflection flickered in the blade. Calm, unreadable. The sound was slow, rhythmic like breathing. Out by the road, a cloud of dust rose. Not wind this time, but riders. 3 men, spurs clinking. The lead one, tall, in a long duster coat, dismounted without a word. He walked up the path, hat shadowing his eyes. "Boone home?" "No." "You his wife?" "No." "Then what are you?" She met his gaze, unflinching. "Working." He spat into the dirt. "Shame. Pretty thing like you, all alone." "I said I'm working." He grinned. Didn't say at what. The other two laughed, cruel and short. Clara didn't move. Her hand stayed near the bucket, fingers loose. "You done talking?" The man's smile died. "You got spirit," he muttered. "Let's see how long it lasts." He reached out and froze when the knife thudded into the post beside his hand, still quivering from the throw. Clara's voice didn't rise, but it carried weight. You tell Crow this ranch don't scare easy. The man stared at her for a long moment, then pulled the knife free and tossed it back. Maybe I'll tell him, he said, mounting up. Maybe not. When they were gone, the quiet returned, but it wasn't peaceful anymore. Boone came back near sundown. He saw the tracks before he reached the gate. Fresh, deep. His jaw tightened. They came again, Clara said from the porch. I can see that. They didn't take anything. Boone set the supplies down. You throw this. He held up the knife, its handle smeared with dirt. She looked at it once, then back at him. He reached for me. I reached faster. Boone gave a long exhale, half relief, half realization. You handle yourself better than most men I've known. I had to, she said. He didn't ask why. He just nodded. Townston and meaner by the day. Maddox Taquine orders straight from Crow now. Folks whisper Crows bought the whole stretch from here to the canyon. Except this ranch. Not yet, Boone said. Then he'll come. Boone looked at her, the way she said it, calm and certain, like reading a fact already written. That night, thunder rolled far away. Lightning flashed behind the mountains, but never touched the ground. Boone sat on the porch, cleaning his rifle. Clara brought coffee, black and hot. Rain's bluffing again, he said. She handed him the cup. It always does. He chuckled low. You got a way of making everything sound like a lesson. She sipped her own coffee. Sometimes lessons are all a person has left. Boone turned to her. You ever lose someone, Clara? Her eyes stayed on the dark horizon. Everyone loses someone. He nodded slowly. Me too. She glanced at him then, softening. Your wife. Years ago. Took a fever I couldn't shoot. They sat in silence, listening to the distant rumble. Finally Boone said, You ever fire a gun? She didn't answer right away. The lightning flickered again, painting her face silver for a breath. Once, she said. Only once. That's so. Yes. Boone tilted his head. And it hit what it needed to. He didn't press further. Some answers were better left lying in the dark. The next day brought smoke on the horizon. Another ranch, Harlan's, had burned overnight. Boone rode out, jaw set tight. Clara stayed behind, mending, waiting. When he returned near dusk, his horse was lathered and his eyes were hard. Crow's men did it. Sheriff ain't lifting a hand. They mean to scare the rest of us off. Will you leave? She asked. No, he said. This land's all I've got left worth defending. Then they'll make you bleed for it. He looked at her. And you? You gonna run if they come? She met his stare without blinking. I've run before. Didn't do much good. The wind caught her hair, pulling loose strands across her face. For the first time, Boone noticed the small scar near her temple. A faint line like lightning faded into skin. He didn't mention it. He only said, You got grit, Clara Vale. And you got ghosts, Elias Boone. He gave a rough laugh. Reckon we both do. Night fell heavy. The lantern light flickered against the window glass. From outside, a coyote's cry cut through the dark. Sharp, sudden, too close. Clara stood by the window, hand resting on the frame. Boone came up beside her. Something's coming, he said. She nodded. It always does before the rain. Boone looked toward the ridge. That ain't rain out there. That's men. He was right. Tiny orange glows dotted the horizon. Campfires where none should be. Crow's riders had settled in for the night, waiting for dawn. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. Then tomorrow, Dustwater will wake to the sound of fire. Boone turned toward her. You afraid? She shook her head. I've lived through worse mornings. He studied her in that dim light, calm, quiet, steady. Something in him wanted to ask who she truly was, but the question stayed buried. Outside, thunder rumbled again, closer this time, like the earth remembering what it meant to roar. Inside, two souls sat in silence, one haunted by what he'd done, the other by what she still might have to do. The air between them held the weight of a promise neither had spoken yet, that when the storm came, they'd face it together. And somewhere, the old storyteller's voice would whisper across time. That was the night before the fire, the night Dustwater Crossing forgot peace, and the woman who said she wasn't beautiful proved she was something rarer, unbreakable. The fire that walked in Dustwater. Smoke rolled across the valley like a living thing. The night had no stars, only fire, orange tongues licking the dark where Boone's barn used to stand. Clara moved through the glow, a shawl wrapped tight, eyes fixed on the burning ruin. The air bit at her throat, hot and raw. Sparks rose like dying prayers. Boone was on his knees in the dirt, coughing blood, streaking his jaw. "They took the herd," he rasped, set it all alight. She knelt beside him. "How many?" "Too many." Maddock led him himself. The words hit harder than the smoke. The sheriff, the law, had lit the match. Clara's hand closed around Boone's arm. "Can you stand?" He tried, stumbled, then nodded. "They'll come back for what's left." She looked toward town, where the horizon still flickered. "Then we don't wait." By the time dawn broke, Dustwater Crossing was a ghost painted in ash. Storefronts were shuttered, the saloon empty but for the stench of whiskey and fear. Clara walked straight down the main road, boots striking the dust in slow, steady beats. Men watched from windows, Crow's men, their laughter dull, uneasy. None stepped forward. The sheriff's office door swung open before she reached it. Maddock leaned against the frame, badge crooked, pistol low on his hip. His smirk was tired, smug. "Boone's lady," he drawled. "Heard you had some trouble." Clara stopped a few feet from him. "You burned his barn." He shrugged. "Accidents happen when folks forget who runs this town." Her voice was calm. "And who's that?" "Silas Crow." Maddox spat the name like a brand. "And I am to keep it that way." Behind her, footsteps scuffed, 2 deputies, rifles ready. The heat rose from the street in wavering lines, distorting everything. Sound, shape, mercy. Clara's gaze never left Maddock. "Then you chose the wrong man to follow." He chuckled. "That's so." Her hand twitched once, barely, and in that heartbeat the air changed. The deputies raised their guns. Maddock drew. A flash, one shot. The bullet split the silence. Maddock's hat flew off his head before he could blink. The second shot shattered the window behind him. Clara's pistol was in her hand now, smoke curling from the barrel like a whisper of memory. "Next one doesn't miss," she said. Maddock froze, the easy grin gone. "You." "Drop it," she said. He did. The gun hit the wood with a hollow sound. "You walk back inside," she continued. "You tell Crow I'm coming." "Alone." Maddock hesitated. "You'll die trying." Her eyes were cold, distant. "Then I'll die telling the truth." Boone woke hours later in the half-collapsed bunkhouse, his ribs wrapped tight. He saw her horse gone, her coat folded neatly on the fence post. A single word written in the dust beside it: "Wait." He cursed under his breath, grabbed his rifle, and saddled what horse he had left. Crow's estate sat above town, a mansion carved from greed, with white pillars and dead roses at the gate. Inside, men drank and laughed, pistols hanging loose for belts. Clara stepped through the front door. The laughter stopped. Crow sat in a high-backed chair at the end of the hall, glass in hand, smile stretched thin. "Well," he said, "the ghost of Boone's land walks among us. Didn't think you'd come yourself. I'm not here for talk." "I figured as much." Crow leaned back, signaling his guards. "Still, it's a shame. You got a look about you, plain but dangerous." "I respect that." She said nothing. "You shoot my sheriff, burn my time. What's your name, anyway?" "Clara Vale." The room stirred. A few men whispering, the name ringing memory. Crow frowned. "That's supposed to mean something?" One of the older men spoke, voice shaking. "Sir, I heard that name once. Widow marksman. Years back. Bounty hunter. Killed the Rook brothers in Missouri. Shot all 3 before they could blink." Crow's grin faltered. "That a fact?" Clara reached in her shawl. "I said I wasn't beautiful." The pistol gleamed as she drew it. "I never said I wasn't dangerous." The room exploded into motion. Men grabbing guns, tables overturning, shouts breaking into thunder. Clara moved through it like she'd been born in fire. Each shot came measured, precise. One man dropped, another fell against the piano. Bottle shattered. Crow ducked behind his chair, screaming for cover. The air was thick with gunpowder and the acrid sting of justice long delayed. Maddox stumbled in from the back hall, arm bleeding, yelling, "She ain't human." Boone burst through the door behind him, rifle raised. "She's more human than any of you." For a second, silence. Crow rose, trembling, pointing his pistol at Boone. "You old fool." You think this land's worth dying for? Boone's voice was raw. It ain't the land. It's what's left of right. Crow cocked the hammer and froze when Clara's barrel touched his temple. You should have stayed in the dark, she whispered. He turned, face pale. You don't understand. I do. One shot. It was over before the sound faded. Crow fell backward, eyes open, seeing nothing. Maddox slumped beside him, bleeding out in silence. Boone lowered his rifle. You didn't have to. I did. Her voice shook just once. They wouldn't stop. He looked around the room. Bodies, smoke, broken glass. They won't forgive this. She holstered her gun. They don't need to. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, hissing as they struck the hot ground. The fire on the ridge dimmed, steam rising where the earth cooled. Boone turned toward her. Who are you, really? Clara's eyes were on the rain. Someone who tried to live quiet. Someone the world wouldn't let. He stepped closer. Then what'll you do now? She looked at him. Not past him, not through him, but at him, with a sadness that felt older than time. Leave before the law remembers what it's for. Boone's throat tightened. You saved us. She shook her head. I just balanced the scales. He wanted to stop her, to say something that might tether her to this world again. But when he blinked, she was already walking into the downpour, her figure a gray shadow swallowed by the storm. The storyteller's voice would later say that Dustwater Crossing never burned again after that night, that the widow with the scar vanished into the canyons, leaving behind a whisper the rain couldn't wash away. Honest, not fancy. And when thunder rolled over the valley, some swore it still sounded like a gunshot. The dust settles soft on graves. The sky had bled into amber and bruised gray when the gunfire began. A single shot cracked through the canyon air, sharp as judgment. Claire didn't flinch. Her shawl fell from her shoulder as she stepped from the barn, the lever-action rifle balanced steady in her hands. Smoke drifted from the gun barrel like a ghost refusing to leave. Two of Colt Avery's men lay face down in the dirt near the corral. Their boots twitched once, then stilled. From behind a wagon wheel, the outlaw leader rose, tall, mean, his hat low, his coat flapping like a crow's wing in the dying light. You've got grit, widow, he said, voice slow and hateful. But grit don't stop bullets. Neither does pride, she answered. The sound of a hammer cocking filled the silence between them. Somewhere, a horse snorted, restless, sensing the storm about to break. Inside the house, the cowboy, the one who'd come weeks ago with more silence than words, knelt by the window, one hand pressed his bleeding side. His rifle rested across his knee. His breath came shallow, but his eyes burned steady, fixed on Claire through the cracked glass. He had told her once, under a quiet sky, I ain't here to save you, just to stand beside you if it comes to it. It had come to it. Colt Avery drew first. His pistol barked twice, throwing sparks in the dusk. Claire rolled into the dirt, a slug tearing through her sleeve. She came up on one knee, breath hot, sight-lined, and fired. The bullet hit him square in the chest. The outlaw staggered back, shock flashing across his face before he dropped to his knees. Dust swirled up around him like judgment rising from the earth. But even dying men can fire once more. His gun lifted, trembling, aimed for her heart. Then came another crack. The cowboy had fired through the window. Colt Avery's body jerked once and fell still, his gun tumbling from his hand into the dust. The silence that followed was so deep it seemed to swallow the wind. Only the slow creak of the barn door moved, sighing like an old soul at rest. Claire rose to her feet, the rifle lowering. Blood ran down her arm, but her eyes didn't blink. She walked to where Colt lay, his face turned toward the fading sun. I told you, she whispered, voice low. This land don't belong to men like you anymore. She kicked his gun aside and turned toward the house. The cowboy stood in the doorway now, pale, half-slumped, but still upright. His hat shadowed his eyes, though she could see the faint smile on his mouth. You should be restin', she said, crossing to him. He shook his head slowly. Wasn't going to let the story end without my part in it. She caught him as he stumbled, her hands pressed against his chest. The smell of gunpowder clung to them both, sharp and holy in the twilight. For a moment, no one spoke. The prairie stretched wide and empty, the last gold light brushing the hills. A hawk wheeled overhead, a dark mark against the fading sky. Claire looked up at him, eyes soft but strong. "You're staying alive, you hear? You didn't come all this way to die on my porch." He smiled faintly. "I came 'cause I heard a good woman needed truth more than fancy words." Her throat tightened. She looked away toward the horizon, where smoke from the gunfire was thinning into nothing. That night, after the dead were buried and the horses settled, Claire sat by the fire, her hands shaking from exhaustion. Across from her, the cowboy rested, eyes half closed, the wound bandaged, his hat resting on his knee. The old clock on the mantel ticked like a heartbeat. Outside, the desert breathed, coyotes crying low, the stars cold and watchful. "You ever going to tell me your real name?" she asked finally. He looked up, and for a long while, only the fire spoke. Then he said, "Names don't matter much when you're trying to outlive him." Her lips curved faintly. "You're a hard man to know." "Not hard," he murmured. "Just old. Been running from something I did long ago, till you made me stop." "What did you do?" He stared into the flames. "Shot a man I shouldn't. Thought leaving the world behind would make it right. Turns out, only thing that makes it right is standing where you're needed." The firelight flickered across his face, carving out the years, the sorrow. Claire reached over and took his hand, calloused, scarred, human. "Then you stood where you were needed tonight." He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time since the sun had risen over Dry Creek Ranch, his eyes softened. "You're something else, Mrs. Hale." She smiled faintly. "I ain't fancy." He squeezed her hand. "No, you're honest." A long silence settled between them. Not the heavy kind, but the kind that means something's been mended. Outside, the wind shifted through the canyons, carrying the scent of rain that hadn't fallen in months. The parched earth waited, cracked and hopeful. The cowboy stood, slow and unsteady, walked to the door, and looked out into the silver night. Somewhere out there, justice had found its peace, not through law, not through vengeance, but through the quiet courage of two broken souls who refused to bow. He tipped his hat low and said, almost to himself, "Funny thing about stories, folks always remember the heroes wrong." Claire turned toward him, the firelight painting her in gold. "How'll they remember us?" He smiled, soft, worn, knowing. "They'll say a woman whispered she wasn't beautiful, and a man answered that he only needed truth." And in the hush that followed, the storyteller's voice, the one that had carried through generations, seemed to echo across the plains. And so it was that at Dry Creek, under the last light of a dying sun, two souls met, not for love nor legend, but for truth. And the truth, out here in the dust, was worth every drop of blood ever spilled for it. The wind carried the words away, leaving only the sound of boots on the porch and the endless whisper of the western night.